because I know like you saw me go into a hole on Spotify, a little bit worried here. Did I come out with a sensible approach? Right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. When Circa was like, "Oh, I'm creating this Spotify training," I'm like, "Wait a second." I had a little.
Are we gonna start like guaranteeing to set your followers on fire?
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast, brought to you by Entrepreneur.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to Creative Juice. I'm your host, Circa. With me, as always, my co-host, Corrin Campbell. How are we doing, Corrin?
Really super duper good.
Good. Very good. I'm very excited to be at our final episode of Spotify Theme Month. We have released our training on it, which should be public about the time that this comes out. And if it is, you can go to entrepreneur.io/Spotify to take a look at our Spotify Field Guide training. But yeah, like it's just been a long road of, first being adversarial with Spotify and talking about why, all the reasons why we haven't done anything with Spotify yet as we were developing the training, and then developing that training, working hand in hand with O'Connell Media, just to get the data, like this whole exercise of working with a playlisting company just to get data back.
Right.
And then building the training and talking to all the indies about it. And this is the final thing that we have to say about Spotify for hopefully at least another year.
Yeah, that would be good. I mean, I think it's really fascinating stuff, but it seems like the company is kind of in a transitional phase, or maybe it's starting to just normalize. I think there's a lot of things that have been shifting, and I don't know if they're going to be like Facebook, where Facebook is just constantly, adding little thing, or actually kind of significant things, right? Like changing the ad platform and then rolling it out to certain users and whatever. So it'll be interesting to see, if Spotify makes changes and pivots as much as Facebook does in their stuff. But hopefully this will at least cover us for a little while, so that, the position statement stands until it changes again.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Well, this episode is just going to sort of be like, it's cool because Corrin's largely stayed out of the Spotify stuff as much as I wish that I could have. And worked on other areas of the company while I've been kind of like head down in this. So I get to kind of report back sort of like an update to our agency team and just all of our technicians on staff. Like what do we recommend? What do we do if a client wants Spotify growth, and how do we advise?
Yeah. And I like that because that's normal for Entrepreneur. And we've said this before, but our founder group kind of informs agency, which also kind of informs training, and sometimes training informs agency and the other way around, so the way that we kind of Entrepreneur as an organism, right? It works like we're each this little organ. A lot of
economies of scale.
Yeah, exactly. So it just kind of informs each other. And so now, since Circa's done all this crazy stuff in Spotify, learning about how the algorithm works and learning about what ads work and what other campaigns work, I think that's, going to be pretty cool for us to start applying and testing, especially because we have artists of all kinds of levels in IndieX, low level, high level, people who have just a grassroots campaign about to go, and then those who have hundreds of thousands of fans. So we'll be able to really test this stuff on different scales, and with even more genres and content than we ever have before.
Yeah, I'd say that there's like 4 ways that we're going to want to attack this episode. And so I'll sort of let Corrin ask any question in these areas, and sort of like we can use those as jumping off points to talk about different strategies. But
Awesome.
As far as I see it, there are 4 different things that you could want to do in terms of marketing your Spotify account or songs.
Right.
So there is direct to playlist campaigns, sending people to playlists that you've built, which is its own thing. There's direct to song campaigns, which is sending people from another platform to a specific song on Spotify. There's direct to profile campaigns, which are really cool and interesting as a marketing challenge. And then there are playlist placement campaigns where either you're paying a playlist plugger who has a network of playlists to put you on multiple playlists, or you're getting placement fees from multiple playlists yourself, doing your own research and building a portfolio of placements to place a certain song. So there's kind of two variants of those kinds of campaigns. And and they all have their benefits and drawbacks depending on what your goals are, and they all have their associated costs.
Right, exactly. Okay, so, and then, the other variables, I suppose, are the types of placements that we're talking about, like when you're sending ads to a certain thing, like what different platforms and placements have worked. So that's what I would be most interested in learning is,
In our training, we break down for each of these different destinations or campaign types, especially the first three, direct to profile, direct to song, direct to playlists. There are different, first of all, like Facebook and Instagram ads is what we're talking about, right? We're not talking about YouTube, Google Display Network, Snapchat ads. We're talking about Facebook and Instagram primarily for those avenues.
Right.
And you're right, the placement, the creative, the offer or the copy, the spirit of the offer, and the audience all play a dramatic role. And it's different for every artist, but also for every destination.
Right, right. So, okay, so we should, as we get into this, I should probably ask you about placements and campaigns in relation to the destination, like you were outlining. Is that probably the best way?
That's a good way, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But you can also ask me in terms of like, you can ask me more broad scale questions about like, position statement with clients or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, to get into the nitty gritty off rip, with direct to playlist campaigns, what I've seen work a lot is Instagram stories ads, but there's also a selection bias for that data. Whereas like the people who run playlist campaigns presume that Instagram stories are legit.
Yeah.
I've also seen people who run those playlist campaigns do direct to song and direct to profile stuff with Facebook ads and be very surprised.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I could see
it's
that.
unclear yet if it's, Instagram stories are the bread and butter placement and creative for direct to playlist campaigns simply for reasons of like people's presumptions and not based on data. But yeah, like that, what has been clear to me is that people have been able to get cost per follower to a playlist, which with playlists you can actually test. You can create multiple variants of the exact same playlist with one variable defining them, like an audience or a placement, and see what gets you cheaper cost per follower, and then go with that winning creative and audience match and just eliminate all the other playlists. And so cost per followers can get down to like 8 cents.
Nice.
Is what we've seen.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's really low. Like, more likely to see like 16 to 20 cents. But if you think about it, like for a $1,600 investment, right? Mm-hmm. At 16 cents per follower, you're looking at what, like 1,000 followers?
Yeah.
Or no, I'm sorry, 1,600. No, it's more than that. It's like 10,000. Right?
Oh, yeah. Where are those decimal points and zeros anyway?
so like a 10,000 like good follower playlist where you can put your songs on it. And you can put people who are like who you collaborate with, their songs on it.
Right.
Like that's really advantageous. It also helps based on our last episode. If you've built it up off of like actually giving people the music that they like, and the music that they like has been proven to be stuff that like the fans of it also like your stuff, mm-hmm. then you can help place yourself in latent vector space with that kind of strategy at scale.
Right.
Like if you're trying to run it up to like tens of thousands of followers for a playlist.
Right. And so like this is a good place to highlight. Like this is, you can buy Spotify followers really cheap. Sometimes I'll see, different artists, bands on Spotify who have like a really ridiculous number of followers and like no streams, you know what I mean? Or no listeners. And that's kind of a good example for, if you are going to make a playlist, like it needs to really be like authentic followers and like authentically similar, that would appeal to the same type of people. You can't just like make a playlist.
Yeah. Like the best playlists that I've seen built have all been like these new cultures that are emerging.
Yeah.
Like, so things that people self-identify as, not just like genres like, rock playlists or like country playlists, but like, one of them is sad rap playlist.
Aw.
And it's all these sad like trap rappers, right?
Right.
And that's a cultural like norm. It's not a genre.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just interesting. Like the most successful playlists tap into like a mode of culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and moods do that too. And I see that from Spotify all the time. Like I'll see mood type playlists, whether it's happy or love or dinner with friends, stuff like that, which I always thought was really interesting. The dinner with friends kinds of playlists. I'm like, but like, is it algorithmic, or like, are you just assuming that certain people will like this during dinner? Maybe it's like background music from an Italian restaurant or something. But I think that's really interesting because there are, so many different variables that could result. Like you're saying, it's not simply genre. And we've actually done that lately with the Indepreneur Indies playlist. Like I realized that sharing, originally I kind of grouped it by mood / genre from top to bottom. And I realized that like there aren't going to be a lot of people who really just want to listen that down unless it kind of created an unintentional listener pod, right? And that's not what we wanted. So instead, like we've been, putting things on, like each month we've been putting on a chunk of people who are indie and kind of sound similar or have a similar mood, so that it's more of like a feature kind of thing. Because that just seems to make more sense with how people listen to things.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like the types of volume we get with our playlists are not going to impact people's streaming data necessarily.
Yeah,
right. But
yeah.
like, it's just interesting to know that there are like our ad technicians are not prepared to run these types of campaigns yet. It's like a different subset of tasks,
right?
Like it's run set of subtasks. Well, our technicians don't know this specific set of subtasks, but they have all the requisite skills.
Right.
So they could, in theory, like totally run it. And it's just interesting to know that like for certain genres, there is, like you can associate a price with like a 10,000 follower playlist. So you add like the ad technician's time, the cost per follower scaled up, and you just run it and you can have this asset. It's not something that the average independent musician working by themselves should do, I don't think. But like for an artist who's gotten up there and now they want to like have a way to manually control their streaming data, they can build up playlists around certain goals. Like it totally can work. It's not something you should do if you're like just starting out by any means, but it's something that can work.
Well,
it's interesting.
That makes sense. Yeah. Well, and when you're saying that this is like a long tail kind of strategy, like, and we say this even when we're talking about standard marketing, right? Where you want to have some kind of revenue case going on. When you're putting like discovering fans is a worthy investment, but you can get like your money back. You might not get your money back. You might break even the very first thing you ever do when you do like an album launch, for example. And then you've got the people to like elevate them through merch, like we were talking about last month. So in theory, like the same thing is kind of, we're saying the same thing about Spotify, where if you put all your dollars into this, it's going to be so long before you're able to get a return. You really want to have some other kind of revenue going into this first, because otherwise you're going to run your career aground unless you just have an endless pool of money, which pretty sure none of us do. So yeah.
And I mean, the reason it makes sense for these playlist companies and the case studies we've examined that do this is because they have business infrastructure around selling these placements.
Right.
And they have like quality controls in place. They have application processes in place. They have, update procedures for updating these playlists. They have all their ads dialed in. They have a wide economy of scale to facilitate it. And like, so that's why I wouldn't say like do this at the outset, because it's very unlikely that you'll be able to do it at scale, manage it all, still do all the other things you have to do, and end up with a good investment of your time and money in terms of marketing result.
Right.
But to know that it is possible is just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I have to imagine that the ad techs who learn how to do this will be in high demand in the music industry, especially if they can do it across Apple Music and Spotify.
Right. Right. Yeah. So
because it is it's very mathematic. It's more like what we do because they can test them.
Yeah, exactly. You know? Yeah, test and replicate for sure. So what are the types of placements that you're seeing work on these different platforms for the different like landings? Like what is the most successful that you've seen in some of the case studies that you've been looking at?
Wow. Yeah, there's some. There are like, so, okay, when you talk about direct to song or direct to profile, all you can really ascertain is cost per click.
Right.
You can't know cost per stream because you don't know what streams came from your advertising unless you start a brand new artist profile. You can't tell cost per follower because you're going to get followers every day if you're doing things right. So you don't know how many of those followers came from your advertising. Right. So you can't actually track the metric. But you can at least get data about the people who are clicking on your ad and build custom audiences against them and then build lookalike audiences, which is helpful.
Nice.
But other than that, it's very difficult. So the types of creative I know a guy who's running his Spotify track hit 1 million. He posted an Instagram image of his Spotify profile with the track hitting 1 million. And it's like just glitch animated. So it's like a video, but it's an image and it's just got glitches in it and stuff. And the song is playing in the background.
Right.
And he's getting like 3 or 4 cent clicks from the US.
Wow.
For that image, running it on both Instagram and Facebook.
That's a cold audience or warm audience?
Both.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's amazing because then you look at the trajectory of that song and it's clearly been impacted by this campaign. To what degree you can't know.
Right.
But like we say, like it's not trackable. But that's not to say that cost per click isn't like a proxy for the metric that you're actually looking for. It's just not a very good one.
Right, right. But you have to like have some kind of KPI, right? Like you have to know. So you have to track something to like see which audiences are doing better than others. And, you know.
So, yeah.
That could be, I mean, and that's the thing we always say about sending traffic to Spotify is that it's tough because it's a data dark zone. We don't really know what happens once they get there.
Black hole, yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, like anytime that you're running ads and you're testing audiences and things like that, you know, using some kind of, you know, precursor metric is sometimes what you got to do to, you know, kind of at least evaluate how things are going. And then you can make some inferences, right, between, you know, certain things. Yeah. So even if your cost per click on the ad is a certain thing and you're getting a certain number of followers, but you know that you're running a bunch of other stuff, you can try to make some educated guesses, right, about how this stuff is working out. So
you can,
what have you been looking at? I mean, obviously you're looking at cost per click. Is there any other kind of metric or any other kind of indicators that you're using to try to evaluate how these things are going?
Yeah. So there's a few danger zones that you can run into with cost per click tracking is that you might get a scenario where Facebook is optimizing for the cheapest clicks, but there's another ad set that's not getting as much budget that has more costly clicks, but it actually gets you a cheaper cost per follower than the ad set that's getting the most love. And what will frequently happen when that happens is you'll see a wide disparity between CPM, what you're paying to actually show your ad for 1,000 impressions. And so if I have a CPM that's like less than $1 and it's getting, 4 cent clicks, and then I have another CPM that's getting like 5 or 6 cent clicks, but its CPM is like $2.50, then I might try to make sure more budget's going to that because it's getting beat out, but it's also performing better in terms of click-through rate.
Okay, gotcha.
You know what I mean? So click-through rate can be a helpful proxy to determine, because the people heard the song presumably in your ad. So it's like, did they click? Are you getting a higher amount of clicks from your 1,000 impressions per 1,000 impressions simply because it's a better fit and these people just cost more. So it's hard to know. There's, it's very difficult to know. And the only way to really make inferences that still are fuzzy is to track everything about your Spotify account day to day and week to week.
Right.
So we've seen models of people doing this. I've done it for a little while with Dukes' data. And you can sort of see, especially if you're not running too much at once, you can see like, okay, here's campaign start. Here is where we expected the numbers to be on this day based on like 3 weeks of data. And here we see like a clear lift or a clear fall. So this is like it's deviating from the expectation, and the expectation has this confidence interval, right? So like, okay, this is 4 weeks of data. And if we ran this same prediction on the past 4 weeks, we get the same result as what we saw. So we can now say the 5th week will we expect it to be here, and it's higher than there. Okay, the campaign's doing something, right. Which is a lot of work to figure out that a campaign's having a positive effect.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, let's like boil this down a little bit. So first question I have is between like what kind of combination of these variables result in like the least expensive results, and from what you can tell, and the highest quality results, and do they overlap?
The highest quality results that I've seen come from direct to playlist campaigns in terms of confidence of benefit, right?
Right.
Now, the most reliable results come from playlist campaigns.
Right.
Like getting placed on playlists, because you can actually research playlists. You can make pretty solid inferences as to whether a playlist is quality in terms of how it was built, and you can know who else is placed on that playlist, so you can make an inference as to, is this right for me in terms of the Spotify latent vector space?
Gotcha.
So you can actually run good arbitrage on playlists and figure out, okay, my dollar is best spent with these 10 playlists. And it's I've watched an artist, and I know this is hard to believe, but I've watched an artist subsidize every dollar he's paid for playlist placement with the streams that came from that placement.
Wow. Yeah, that's
not
awesome.
Possible for everybody.
Right.
Your genre depends.
Yeah. And so you're using a combination of your ad results and the Spotify artist dashboard, and looking at the placements or streams from these various playlists. Is that kind of the combination of things you're using?
There's multiple ways. So researching playlists, a great way is first you need to find playlists in your genre that sell placement. So that's like task one. Typically, they'll have a submission email and their description of the playlists, but sometimes it's not so obvious. And then you can go to their user profile that built the playlist and see all the other playlists that they run, find others, or you can go down the playlist, find artists that clearly bought placement on it, so they don't have a whole lot of monthly listeners. And then you can go to their About section, and the playlist will be in their top playlist. You can see how many monthly listeners came from that playlist, so you can derive quality of getting placed on that playlist.
Yeah, that sounds exhausting.
I know a kid who has spreadsheets on spreadsheets of all these playlists that he's done research on, maintains it, and uses it when people hire him to get them onto the right playlist.
Right. And so when you send ads to playlists, you're not talking about sending ads to your own playlist. You're actually sending ads.
I am.
Oh, okay.
I was earlier in the podcast. Yeah. But this is more about just finding a playlist, paying their placement fee, and getting your song placed on that playlist.
Have you experimented sending ads or using ads to send them to someone else's playlist?
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. That's like, I mean, it's just, there's a more efficient way to spend that dollar.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. So,
but that said,
yeah,
the case study that I've seen for it is like, like for me, how I'm doing it with my career, what I'm planning to do is I'm using my initial fan finders. Like I'm just doing all the introduction and education stage work right now.
Right.
Gearing up for having enough works to do my permission and affirmation stage. But while I'm in education heavily, I'm trying to create a reciprocity between my audience on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and my audience on Spotify. So I'm getting early streaming data into my Spotify with just like really smart planned out releases. And then I'm going to go to try to either create or get placed on playlists or both. And building up that revenue, because like I know artists now who have, like several thousand coming in through Spotify every month, and now they're just allocating budget. And that's when you start to look at, well, should I run some direct to song? Should I run some direct to profile?
Right.
Because you have extra budget to run evergreen campaigns. You might not be 100% certain they're getting you the result you want, but you have a reasonable confidence interval in it.
Right. Gotcha. So for these let's talk about direct to song. How has that been working out, and what is the best way you've seen to try to do that?
Yeah. So, direct to song is great for warm, obviously, because you can just email everyone and get them to that song.
Right.
And it builds a lot of early streaming data, because really the only reason you'd run any audience, cold or warm, to your existing song is like the highest prevalence of that is going to be when the song's first released, right? We all agree that like that's the time you want to send them to it. But there's a reason for that. It's that you want to get streaming data on the track so that it can be placed accurately in the vector space.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Makes sense. You need to build those signals early on. And so that's when a direct to song campaign can really help out. But I don't know, you can get more volume by doing just cold direct to song. Obviously, it's not I've seen follower finders. Corrin, they're doing follower finders.
Oh my God.
And they're doing really well. There's a link in the post text and everything, and they're getting really cheap clicks and also really cheap 75% video views on top of that.
Wow.
Yeah. And so you can get more volume that way, but it's also fuzzier data.
Right.
And I'd rather have the clean data, which is why I'm going much more with an approach of let's filter everyone out with my fan finder and then get them to Spotify education stage.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But that's not just I as much as I hate to say it, I have seen volume strategies with cold follower finder, link in post text to Spotify.
Right.
And then capturing their data to make a custom audience. So you pixel them on the way to Spotify, build a custom audience, build lookalikes, run the same ad on those lookalikes, and you have a virtue cycle. The lookalikes keep getting better.
Right.
So yeah, it's a wacky time we're living in, but that's the utility of direct to song.
Right. So when you're talking about so still sticking on the song, have you found that either IG or Facebook or stories or regular placements, news feed type placements, has anything kind of been the shining star as far as those split tests are concerned?
I've found that direct to profile and direct to song are best supplemented by content.
Okay.
Because so there's not a lot of content you can put in a story.
Right.
And I haven't seen a whole lot of people replicate the success of direct to playlists with stories.
Okay.
With direct to song but our buddy Ari Herstand and his case study Lucidius, they teach a direct to song Instagram stories, and there's no question that Lucidius has built up his streaming to impressive numbers. So my recommendation in the training is you need to be testing all placements. Here's how to do that. Right. Here's what I've seen in terms of trends, but that should be by no means be taken as what you should rely on.
Right. Gotcha. And so when you're doing direct to playlist, how is that looking in that field?
Direct to playlist, I've seen the thing is that I don't have a whole lot of data of people running direct to playlist with Instagram feed as a placement.
Right.
Or Instagram or Facebook newsfeed as a placement.
Okay.
And so I don't know if it's because there's not a big enough sample size to say that Instagram stories is better than Facebook newsfeed or Instagram feed as a placement for direct to playlist.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
It's the classic Instagram is flames problem.
Yeah.
Everyone just goes out and assumes Instagram's flames. Mm-hmm. And then they try out one Facebook ad and they're like, hey, this is pretty tight. And you're like, yeah, duh.
Right. Exactly. That's what we've been saying the whole time.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. Well, all right. So we've got direct to song, direct to profile, direct to playlist. Have you seen any artists who are what types of playlists and what length of playlist, and how kind of are those being curated by the artist when you're doing it that way?
You mean in a direct to playlist campaign, like you're building up your own playlist? Yeah. So we like the what Spotify considers good playlists typically fall within a range of 50 to 100 songs.
Okay.
So the most popular playlists on Spotify are like in that range typically.
Gotcha.
There are some in different genres like instrumental that have like 300 songs, but those are like sort of weird use case.
Yeah, ambient kind of stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. So for like lyrically driven songs, I see a lot of 60 songs.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, I'd say around like 45, 50 to 100. And you have to update them weekly. Not only that, you're going to start getting submissions from people for songs. And that's its own headache because it's not as simple as like, oh yeah, just give them a fee, right? Because you have to deal with customer service. You have to deal with implementing, like there's so much that goes into business infrastructure for this.
Right.
And so it's not like you can just strike up a playlisting business overnight just because you got one playlist starting to get submissions.
Right.
That's going to be it will just consume you. So, yeah, like it's not so clear what to do there, but yeah, you have to update regularly. You have to the testing structure for building a great direct to playlist campaign is insane because you're building out 4 different iterations of the playlist. You're giving them a slight variant in their description so that you know which one is which. Then in a spreadsheet, you have to. So like, let's say you want to test audiences. You have 7 audiences to test. Great. 7 playlists. You got to know which playlist goes to which audience. And then you have to create a bridge page for each one so that you can pixel everyone on the way there.
Right.
And they have to be separate bridge pages.
Yeah.
And then, because it's different, playlist links.
Right,
and then you have to, get all that down, figure out what the best audiences are. And then if you want to test like creative, you want to test playlist titles, then you have to shut down all those playlists to just the one that had the most followers. And then you keep that and you create as many variants as you have like titles or creatives to test.
Right.
And you run all of your creative variants to those fresh ones. Because if you run one to the one that already has followers, you don't know if it got more followers because of the social proof.
Right.
So you have to have clean data there. It's just a huge test structure, and it takes like 2 or 3 weeks to derive the best audience and creative combo. But once you do, it can get really low depending on genre.
Right. So are you feeding, when you have like these 7 playlists, for example, are you deleting those playlists and then sending an ad to the new playlist to the people who originally clicked on the ads for those other 6? Or like, are you just letting all 7 of them continue to exist?
No. So like, okay, let's say that I would start off by testing, like, let's say I wanted to test creative and audiences. I got 4 creative ideas, 7 audiences. So first I'm going to make 4 playlists and test them for creative on an all interest audience, like an audience that has just blanket, all of my best interests.
Right.
Just to have like a clean variable there. And then you figure out which one is getting you the best cost per follower after 4 to 5 days. And that's your winning creative. Then you delete 3 of the 4 playlists.
Oh my goodness.
You keep one that has the most followers just in case during your audience test, none of those playlists get more followers than that one that you keep.
Right. Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Right. And then you want to go with that one as the version of the playlist you're going to stick with. And then you build, as many playlists as you have audiences, many bridge pages as you have those. And then you test it all. And then you get down to the best audiences. You keep one playlist out of all the ones that you have left.
Right.
And that's the one that you're running all of your audiences and you're winning creative to.
That's crazy.
But at the end of all that, you probably will have enough pixel data to create lookalikes.
Right.
And you just throw those into the mix, and now you have a campaign that is not only at its lowest cost per follower, but it will get lower over time. And, it's a really genius campaign structure. It's really genius how these people who do this have figured out how to test where you cannot test,
Right.
Like it's like water. It just finds a way. So it's cool because it's cool for us as nerds because it's the data-driven way to derive a result on Spotify.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a lot, but also it sounds like something I could really just like get down the rabbit hole with. It's like, the spreadsheets. I love the spreadsheets, you know?
Yeah.
So, okay. So looking at all of that, what creatives have you seen kind of working, and do they differ between, these different placement, like direct to profile, direct to song, direct to playlist?
Yeah. So I think that I would say that for direct to song, like the best thing I've seen is like very short animated image content, which is weird and not something that I would personally do, or follower finder, like taking any fan finder and just putting a link in it. Seems to be like shooting fish in a barrel in that context, unfortunately.
Which is like the thing we always are like, don't do that. Don't put a CTA button. Don't do this and that.
Totally. Well, okay, so here's just this like, because that definitely puts egg on our face for the whole no link thing.
Right.
And just to address that, like, I think things have shifted underneath us. Like that, historically, that's been true that links kill this. But in this context, Spotify is well established. People are now familiar with streaming generationally, and it's not a huge ask. Like, go stream my song is not as big an ask as it once was because it's not as confusing. There's more brand recognition, and it's a behavior that most of us do every day now, whereas before it was pretty new.
Yeah.
So, and also another thing is that for people like my age and older, or maybe a little bit younger than me and older, we remember a time when music cost money. Like anytime you listen to music, you were either listening to an ad or you were buying it.
Right.
And there was a high cost associated with it. So if you're listening to music that you truly wanted to listen to, there was a money ask.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, the ask to go listen to your music, maybe the ask is falling.
Right.
And that's why we're seeing just better results in the tests. But yeah, follower finder has been working out for direct to song. Then again, like if you let's say you get a really cheap cost per click, like 4 cents for a follower finder. Great. Every user has to stream your song 10 times before that subsidizes, if pending that they're from the US or Canada or United Kingdom.
Right.
Because anywhere else is going to be a lower cost per stream.
Right.
So yeah. So it's not the sickest thing in the world, but it's just like,
you mean a lower pay per stream, right? Not cost. They pay.
Yeah, pay per stream, exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So okay.
Yeah.
So all right, we're looking at all this stuff. All right. So I'm trying to like get my brain around all of the different variables of this here. So
totally, yeah.
When we're looking at, so we're sending people to Spotify. I mean, this is specifically about Spotify, but have you done any, or have your case studies done any testing as far as Apple Music's concerned? And do they use any kind of, because I know like on Facebook, obviously you can do interest targeting with Spotify. Are you excluding Spotify or only including Spotify as an interest, like narrowing the audience where they have to, have Spotify in there? Or, are you excluding Apple Music people? Like how is that working out?
So Facebook is a data partner with Spotify.
Right.
So I would say that out of all the interests in Facebook, theirs is less fuzzy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
I feel a lot more confident using Spotify as an interest, knowing that this is like a good set of Spotify users. Maybe not all of them,
Right.
or maybe some who are no longer, but it's largely true. It's largely accurate.
Okay.
You don't get a whole lot of people commenting like, "What is this on Apple Music?"
Right.
So yeah, you cross-target with Spotify. Now, for Apple Music, everything that we've gone over is also relevant, except for the recommendation engine. It's different. And it's based off of another set of principles. Like back in the day, there was like data about this, but Apple Music's recommendation engine is not as difficult as it is to learn about Spotify's recommendation engine. Apple Music doesn't have a whole lot of discoverability pathways.
Right.
And for those that they do, it's like technology they bought probably years and years ago, not something they're actively developing.
Yeah. I've always found that so strange because like the iPod and the iTunes Store was like one of the first responses to like MP3s being free, and it's just shocking to me that Apple has, I mean, they're working on it. I mean, obviously, like now the artist dashboard is out of beta. I've had that dashboard for a couple of years, but I think it's open to everybody now. And it's just kind of surprising that as these forward thinkers in music and monetizing music, that, even I think that the Apple Music like app to use and to find playlists and whatever is exceedingly more difficult than it is on Spotify. And so I'm always kind of shocked that Apple Music hasn't progressed far beyond Spotify in some of these different engines and discoverability, because it just seems like they were there first, and how have they kind of trailed behind? And it's probably just because Apple has like many arms of business and, the music is not the most profitable one, but it's kind of, I think Spotify has definitely outpaced Apple in that department.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard to look at Apple and say like, oh, how do you let this, like, because Spotify's not a profitable business. So it's like, how do you let this opportunity just fall by the wayside? Right. It's like, well, we probably make more money because we don't chase it.
Right. We make more money because we charge $25,000 for a customized Mac tower and a cinema display, which I will still buy. I'm not criticizing them for that because I'm a total sucker. But
the thing is their display is not even, I can't even color grade with it. Like you'd have to buy an actual color grading monitor. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, anyhow.
That said, Apple Music, the Spotify playlist payola economy is moving over to Apple Music as we speak. Right. There are people, there's a whole economy buzzing there and it's only growing. And there's like people already made all the mistakes and learned all the lessons with Spotify playlisting. I'm sure they'll have a quicker speed of implementation on Apple Music. We'll see it pop up over the next year. There'll be a lot of talk about it. And Apple Music, it seems like they're gearing up competition with Spotify, but then there's no real like announcements. So, who knows? I don't even know if they care.
Right. And that's the thing too, is that Apple is very like all of these things behind the curtain kind of thing. And even though they're a public company and so is Spotify, like it seems almost as though, they're building the App Store. I don't know if you watched the latest like Apple announcement, stuff. I have the new iPhone 11 Max Pro or whatever, and I do have the new Apple Watch. Like I'm ridiculous, but one thing that they were talking about a lot is like their game store is being developed, their app store is being developed, and there's just hasn't been any news on music, but it might be because they're kind of a behind the curtain, drop a big bomb type of company, where Spotify has just been slow and steady for the most part. So, So bottom line on this, are you, do we think that it might be worth trying to figure out Apple Music early because it'll be what, our case studies have done in the last 2 years on Spotify? Like getting in on it now would be an early shot, or are we still kind of saying like, well, I'll stick to Spotify for now?
I think that streaming is playing an increasing role in education stage strategies. It's like a first or second stop for people is streaming. Mm-hmm. And we've been ignoring it as something we could facilitate for too long.
Right.
We can build it into our buddy system campaigns and our diagnosis to offload warm audience to Spotify in a non-destructive way.
Right.
So we're getting the data, we're pixeling them, we're making sure that we have the data, we're not losing them, but we're just letting them go off and play in Spotify land where we can't see for a little while.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think it's worth it to focus on all streaming. Now to like focus on one streaming or another because the payout's different, I don't think that's smart. People are going to use Apple Music or Spotify for reasons that have nothing to do with your band or your music.
Right, exactly.
You're not going to influence that decision for people. So just be on both.
Yeah.
The thing is that the reason that Apple Music, I think, is paying you out more is because they're not staffing a world-class machine learning development team in order to get you more streams.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, obviously they're going to pay you more because everything that happens on Apple Music, you brought there.
Right.
You brought it there.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. I gotcha. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's why it's like, if you're going to do manual campaigns, do it on Spotify for now, just because you have a chance of getting out, it can be alchemy. You can get out more than you put in.
Right.
If you're very careful over a considerable period of time.
Yeah.
Let's clarify that.
Yeah.
Yeah. For a grassroots artist, I would say, like, let's build streaming outflows from your education stage.
Right.
That's like off rip. And then anytime you're running a fan finder, let's follow up people.
Right. Yeah.
To, direct a song maybe, or in the comments or in Messenger or whatever.
Yeah.
We could spend a little bit of budget behind that. Now, if we had O'Connell Media's techs, we might offer at an agency level, like, for someone who's got like, they're past the 6-figure level in their business or close to it. We'd be like, look, we could get you like a really big playlist that you own.
Right.
It would take this much in testing, and then like we'd reach a cost per follower. It would probably be between this and this to get 10,000 followers, and they'd all be high quality people who actually like this type of music, and that would be a huge asset to you. I could imagine a world in which like that's a service.
Right.
And for artists of a certain size, it makes sense to make that investment into a playlist that you own.
Right.
That's got a lot of followers.
Yeah.
But I would say that like you've got an email list approaching like 10,000 that you operate well by then.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's interesting because like I included in my album launch, when people were landing on the pages and there was all this background story and whatever, I gave them the option to download WAV or MP3. And I also put links to Spotify and Apple Music next to every song.
Yeah.
And like I did see a little bump, more so than just the people who were going directly to the song. Like there was it wasn't one of my big Discover Weekly moments, but it was like, okay, I got 2,500 extra monthly listeners out of that from that period of time, and was on Discover Weekly a little bit, So, and a lot of it was like deep cuts, they weren't like hit tracks. So I wasn't expecting anything to happen with that. So is that something that you think that, indies should start implementing if they're not at the point where, building a playlist or putting a lot of money into Spotify makes sense? Like, do you think that's more distracting? Do you think that can help? Do you think it doesn't do either? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think Spotify, okay, like if you do the right things with Spotify over like 2-year period and you're active marketing, Spotify can become an important introduction stage for you.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Like it really can. It can become a huge discovery for you. But that's only if you're doing great marketing, like as per the buddy system. And that's like not to say you have to use the buddy system. I just mean like marketing that ticks all the boxes. Right.
Right. Because then there's a lot going on and there's a lot of sympathetic movement in all directions.
Exactly. And then you make sure that any time at which someone really loves your song, they go listen to it on Spotify if they're a Spotify user. If you make sure that happens, that will be great for you.
Right, exactly.
That would be great for you. Yeah. Because you'll end up in a space in the latent vector space where like anyone you're recommended to loves it.
Right.
And the second that you have enough juice to get in Discover Weekly, it will probably pop off because you're in the exact right space.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Are there, and I'm cold on this, are there user curated Apple playlists right now, or is it only official Apple playlists?
Yep.
Really?
You can create public playlists on Apple Music. Yep. And it's already started.
Game on, man. Game on. Let's start it.
Yeah.
Okay. So can you expand a little on these like bridge pages? Like how are those used? Where do they fit and what are they doing?
So yeah, basically, and there's like a lot of reasons you could want this in marketing, but you want to send someone to a destination where you can't put a tracking pixel. From Facebook.
Right.
Meaning you cannot create a custom audience of people who have visited that place that you're sending them to. And you can't create a lookalike audience. So you cannot make a big cold audience that you can serve ads at scale on who are probably the right people.
Right. So
that
really
ability is taken from you.
A really quick question. I think there's a misunderstanding from people about being able to identify audiences who clicked on an ad. Can you just kind of explain? Because I think some people think that,
Yeah.
You know, go ahead.
So you would think that, you know, Facebook lets you create all these custom audiences. So you can create audiences of people. And when I say create audiences, that's audiences that you can use in an ad campaign. When you select your audiences,
right.
You can create audiences of people who have done a certain action, like watched a video on Facebook, visited your Facebook profile or Instagram profile, clicked on any posts. There's different like things that you can create audiences based on, but clicked on a specific ad is not one of them.
Right.
So you cannot create a custom audience of people who clicked on a specific ad. You can only do any post or ad, which means everyone who's clicked on any post or ad.
Right.
So
that's why this bridge page is so important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and there's multiple ways to do it. Like there's other companies out there who might offer a pixeled redirect. So it's just a redirect link, like a link shortener, like Bitly, except before it redirects to the place you're sending them to, it pixels them. So you can put your Facebook tracking pixel in there and you can create a custom audience of people who have, you know, triggered that pixel. So that's the way to get custom audience data back out of campaigns where you're sending someone to somewhere you can't track.
Right.
And we use, I use ClickFunnels bridge pages. So I basically create a page that it look like I take a screenshot of where I'm sending them and I make that full screen on the page so that they, you know, if it happens to load, they think, okay, I'm in the right place. This is where I was supposed to go.
Right.
But usually it doesn't even load. Usually it's like redirect within half a second and it pixeled them in that time.
Right.
And, right. So that it's a way to track, you know, clicks from Facebook and also build custom audiences based on them. And what's great about it is it also creates a tracking relationship. So later on in Facebook Analytics, you could theoretically see who has both been through my Spotify tracking link, my bridge page, and who has made purchases in my business. Right. And you can track
the correlation.
The volume of throughput.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, because I think that's something that people misunderstand, that you can like set up a particular ad and then see, like set an audience, like not just viewing the clicks, right? And so that's something that's a common misunderstanding, I think, with a lot of people who are, you know, experimenting in the ads platform and haven't run a lot of stuff yet. So when we're looking at, you know, this bridge page, obviously, like the click that lands them on that bridge page isn't as high intent, but and it doesn't necessarily mean that they became a follower or, you know, became or streamed a song, but it does mean they at least clicked on it and they're interested, right?
Yeah, and we talk about this in the training. We talk about how certain placements and creatives and ways of framing the offer and the copy are going to pre-qualify people more or less, and therefore the custom audiences you create are going to be more or less fuzzy data.
Right.
If you're doing an ad that's like, I have this song. Here is the song. You hear it? Great. If you click this button, you will go to Spotify and listen to this song. Right. Click the button if you want to do that.
Right.
That would be like the most ironclad data that like, yeah, they wanted to go, man. Right? And if you have like a 15-second image ad that's a little bit vague as to what's going to happen, that's very fuzzy data and you can't, it's not going to be as useful.
Right. Exactly. So, all right. Well, sign me up, man. I'm going to go get that training. All right. What other nuggets of knowledge do you have? Because I'm tapped out. I'm excited, but I want to know what else you want people to glean from all this.
I would just say overall, like just in general, a lot of the other stuff we talk about is a better marketing goal to have than I want to blow up my Spotify before I even have a fan base.
Right.
Yes, you could go straight to these ad campaigns that we've talked about and like try them out and make that the only thing you do. But at the end of the day, you're not going to have an email list. You probably won't have a customer list. You probably won't have a lot of the infrastructure that you need to build in order to have a solid music business. So like, don't fetishize Spotify over like more than you need to, right?
Right.
Spotify is great, and streaming like much more than we ever really talked about. After this run, I think streaming is a very necessary part of the buddy system. Like it's education stage, nurturing stage, absolute necessity. But that means that it's a part of the buddy system and not the whole thing. So I would incorporate it into the marketing that we've already talked about since the beginning of this company. And insofar as your streaming revenue allows, reinvest your streaming revenue into some of the campaigns we've been talking about, playlist placement campaigns, direct to playlist campaigns, building up your own playlists, and direct to song and direct to profile, and play around with it, because you can really strike gold. And now I've got several people who are running automated evergreen campaigns that are just, their streaming is skyrocketing because of all these factors, not just those campaigns. Right. So it's a long, slow burn, and it should be incorporated into your overall marketing mix. It shouldn't replace it.
Gotcha. Awesome, man. Well, hey, I'm excited. Thanks so much for answering all those questions. I know that IndieX is going to be stoked to start experimenting with some of this stuff.
Yeah. Did that like, because I know like you saw me go into a hole on Spotify, a little bit worried here. Did I come out with a sensible approach? Right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. When Circa was like, "Oh, I'm creating this Spotify training," I'm like, "Wait a second." I had a little.
Are we gonna start like guaranteeing to set your followers on fire?
Yeah, exactly. I was so concerned, and even when he was telling me about the development stuff, I got to tell you guys, like, I was still cynical, because I'm like, man, that's just Spotify like saying what they want to say, right? So that they look the way they want to look. But when I realized like what was coming out of all of these like developer resources and the way that they were explaining things compared to what I've always heard from the business, I was like, no, because if this was like a PR thing and they were just putting stuff in the white papers or in the development documentation that was for a forward-facing thing, it would say the same thing as what the forward-facing stuff was saying, and it's not. You know what I mean? So I was definitely freaked out, but I've really enjoyed kind of learning about this from Cirque, just like and knowing that we're still saying the same thing, right? Like it does require that you like make inferences. It definitely should not replace the rest of the things that we've always said are important, but it would be dumb for us to ignore that this is a movement in the music industry, and that, there should be some way that we're accounting for it as we go.
Yeah, I think we put it in its proper place, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It is by no means everything, but it is the dominant way that people listen to music now. And one of all these streaming platforms has the power to open up your discovery and open up your introduction stage, which although it's not very trackable, can be beneficial. And I hope to God that people use these strategies to incorporate into everything they're doing and not replace it. That's my only wish for this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Hell yeah. Well, what do we got going on next month? Let me check the marketing calendar here.
I don't even know, man. All the exciting things.
Next month, we're going to be talking about a couple subjects for our theme. We're going to be kind of taking a look at Messenger again, since a lot of changes have come to the Messenger platform. Facebook Messenger is way different since we first published our Messenger training. So not only will we be updating that training, should be out before the end of 2019, but we're incorporating a lot of Messenger strategies into touring right now. So we figured this would be a great place for not only Corrin to talk about her upcoming experience touring. She's going to be doing a tour in London, right?
Yeah, actually all over the UK. And I actually am playing in Glasgow for the first time. So I'm super excited. Wow. Yeah, but I'll be all over the UK for pretty much the first 18 days of October. So I'll make sure to get lots of video of the moor for everybody, but also like just, experimenting. There's plenty of markets over there, and I'm just opening. So there's not a ton of pressure on me, as far as that's concerned, but there are a couple of these markets where I don't have existing fans, at least not a bulk of them. And so I'm experimenting with some tour ads, which, we always say that cold traffic tour ads are tough. But, nonetheless, there are ways that we can try to do them as well as possible and get, obviously contact information out of it. And I'll be testing some things actually at the shows to get more discovery happening from, the bands that go after me and the headliners. So that will be cool. And then also, Jack's doing a ton of stuff. We have a couple of artists who are planning tours and using Messenger to gather emails because Messenger has become so restricted lately.
Yeah. So we'll have a chance to talk about the updates coming to the Messenger training and how we use Messenger for artist marketing. And then we're going to be talking a little bit about the intersection of Messenger and touring with what Jack's been doing. And then we get to just kind of transition right into touring. And then after that, for most of the rest of the year, we're going to be, at the end of the year, we'll be talking about, just wrapping up 2019, all the lessons we've learned, what we expect for 2020 in terms of art marketing. But also before that, we'll have a chance to talk about sales promotions, which, obviously Black Friday is coming up. If you haven't started planning Black Friday and holiday promotions for your fans, do that now.
Absolutely.
Get it out of the way.
Yeah.
But we'll have a chance to give you guys some tips for that as well.
Yeah, I think that's something, we touched on it a little bit in the merch sales last month, but that's something that I think we can integrate all kinds of stuff that we've been talking about over the last couple of months, because you want to look at margins. You want to look at how to make sure that your bundles or your special sales for these, for the holidays that are coming up and all of that makes sense for your business still. So we'll be able to kind of touch on all, the entire arc of products and margins and promotions and things that work and don't work and how to talk to your audience about it. So I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Hell yeah. So yeah, we've got an action-packed rest of 2019 for you guys. I hope that this Spotify detour has been helpful and informative for you. And we're going to see all the rest of you next week on Creative Juice.